Hello everyone, so we'll just start on time. I would like to talk today about tests, so it will not be a tutorial. I find those many times boring. I'm trying to show you some specific example of what tests permitted us to find on what we have been able to correct. So I hope you will learn at least something, and maybe that you will also teach me something. I'm Patrick Mevzek, I'm working in AFNIC, it's a French domain name registry, so .fr domain names, and we will see .pm domain names. Some lecture from where we started, where we are going. And then some specific, I will show you some specific example both from work and from my personal project on how I'm using tests on some, I think, best practices. So there are currently 2.6 million .fr domain names, which, by the way, exist because of Perl code. In fact, all of our technical infrastructure, all of our backend system is done in pure Perl. So that's something. Even if you've heard about that DNSSEC, which is a kind of security protocol for DNS, part of it for .fr is implemented with Perl code. And we are not alone doing that. Some other registries, both European or other registries, are doing the same thing. So that applies to other TLDs that we are doing, because French has many territories. So I'm sure you all know what the TF, YT, WF, and RE are as territory, otherwise you can find that on Wikipedia and everywhere else. But of course, what interests us today is the PM domain names that exist. It's a French territory called Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, but of course for Perl it's something else. Unfortunately, there is only a little over 5,000 .pm domain names, so do not hesitate to register .pm domain names. It's basically open to any European national or corporation. So with all of that, it would be better if everything is tested. Of course, I won't lie to you, we do not have 100% coverage. Maybe we will someday, but maybe not. But at least it will be good if most of these things are tested. And my examples will be for two cases. So on the left, it's my own personal project. It's a module called NetGRI that you can find on CPAN. It's basically implementing protocols used by registrars, so companies selling you domain names to connect with us. So there is only one developer, myself. You have the number of modules, method, number of line of code. And on the other side, so more of my work, which I talked just earlier. So the code, at least based on the Git repository, started in quite a while ago. There have been 30 developers, of course not at the same time, but over the years. So 30 developers mean that you have basically in your source code like maybe 40 different styles of coding. So it's also something that can be a problem and that can be helped by some tests. And of course there is many more lines and in fact less modules but more methods. And it's mission critical, of course, if some domain names stop to resolve on the internet, if your website, if your emails, if all your stuff stop working, it's a big deal. So it has to work. One point interesting is that we often hear people wanting, so we have a long history. The code started almost in 15 years ago. So people coming to that, their first impression is let's do a rewrite. Let's start everything from scratch. The problem with that is that most of the time people wanting to do a rewrite, starting from scratch, are the people knowing less about things. So if they will rewrite everything, they will basically make the same mistake as before and many more new mistakes. So test already give something there, because if you do not have everything documented, test fix the current situation. If you have a test for your current code, you can at least make sure that you know a little about what your code is doing. You have specific examples. So even before attempting to rewrite something or to refactor something, having tests, it's a kind of documentation. So if you do not have time or if you do not like to do documentation, at least do some tests that prove that you have some code using your API and that you have some thing that people can learn and can study. Since we started to do more and more tests, when we hire people, the first thing we ask them to do is to review our test and try to add more tests. Because adding more tests means you have to know the code, you have to understand it, so it helps you start to go into a code you do not know yet. So, but there are obstacles, of course, it's not so easy. You need time to do tests. There is one point interesting here, and I've stumbled over that, is that if you do everything right, which I'm sure you're all doing, you have proper modules. What I'm calling proper modules is something that at least you can load and you can do a syntax check without any side effects. On the contrary, a modulino is something that may have side effects. For example, we have some code that should be modules, but in fact you have global variables in them and you have a database connection as a global variable, which means that just loading the module in memory or just doing perl.c, perl-c, so just doing a compile check, will load the module in memory, of course, and will initialize the global variable and will initialize the connection to the database. Which, of course, to do tests is not nice. We will see later you have many options to do tests with databases, but if you can have modules that you can at least load in memory without any side effects, that helps a lot. So, as I said, you have many mocking strategies to mock object classes and databases. Something that you may encounter is when you have a set of modules, you may have dependency between them, and you may have even loops of dependency. Of course, it's a bad design, but it may happen. It generates at least warnings, but in fact, it complicates test a lot. So there is something to make sure to work on, to make sure you do not have too many dependencies. It's not always something rewarding. I mean, doing tests, especially if you talk with your manager or other people, they will not see immediately what gain you give to the company. So it's something you need to evangelize and to explain. Some people even may say, so I'm sorry, I did not say that loud enough. I'm basically talking about unit tests. So there are also some people saying that we do not need unit tests because we have functional tests. So we indeed have in-house some people doing functional tests. So that's one part of the problem. But as you will see later, some unit tests are already enough to spot common problems. And of course, if you work with legacy code, you may not have all the whistle and good thing of modern Perl. Of course, in 1998, you did not have Moose, you did not have DBI class, you did not have Perl best practices that I will talk later, Perl tidy, or even Perl 5.18. So we are not using that version in Perl in production, we are using an older one. So it means that you may be restricted on the choice of tools and things you can do. You may also have problems. I know many companies have like a ban on CPAN. They are saying you can develop anything, but basically you cannot use CPAN modules, which is crazy, but some people are working like that. At least we are not in that problem, but we have another problem that I think is even more common, is a classic DevOps problem. The operation part of the company basically says we only install like Red Hat or Debian packages of modules. So you will have those versions and not the latest version from CPAN. So, for example, currently I have exactly that problem. I would like to have one module, but I would like the latest version which is on CPAN, which is not the latest version available as package, as distribution package. So currently we are blocked for that. So, based on that, should we do something? There are you could find some people saying basically my code has no bugs. So there is a slight rephrase of that, more subtle. You can read there. It's an interesting problem because it's doing tests is a kind of negative proofs. It's the same problem as security or special effects in movies. Security are good or special effects are good if you do not see them. And of course, it's a classic example of technical debt, because if there are things that you do not test today, you may have problems later that you could have discovered earlier. So, some tips I can give you. So, one step at a time really is from a famous movie. You can have bonus karma points if you know which one. But the book I found very interesting and very useful and pragmatic is that one from O'Reilly. So it's a blue book. It's really down to earth on giving you specific immediate example. You need time. You need to have a good will and a strong will. You need to have patience. It may be a tedious work. I will show you some tools that can help, but it's still a tedious work if you have many thousand lines of code. You can be lonely doing that, but more important, I will show you some tools. So basically my tutorial on unit test will be for you to read, if you do not do tests already, to read test more. Manual page is clear and simple enough. I mean, to start doing tests is really enough. So I will not go over specifics on doing tests. You have everything in the manual. It will be overkill to rephrase it. So immediately there are two tests that you can do on all your code base. They are called useOK and canOK. So useOK just verifies that your modules loads in memory and it's syntaxically valid. That's at least something. And like I said, I put easy on the between quotes, because even useOK may be problematic in some cases. Like I said before, if even loading your module in memory opens connection to database, you may already have a problem here testing it. But forcing you to test it will make sure that you understand that you may have a problem. And canOK does the same thing, but for each method of your module. So at least testing that the API is complete and the method you think you have in your module is really the list of methods you have in your module is the test you can do. So you can start having some tests very easily. Then you can go further, of course. Okay. You can test for documentation if you're doing your documentation inside your modules as pod. It's not something I do too much, so I will not talk about that too much. Perl best practices, we will talk about that later. There is something that was had a lot of discussion a few years ago called quality spelled like that. So you have a module, some explanation. It's doing some tests, like it's specifically for when you distribute a module. So testing that what you distribute as a README file, which is of interest, as a manifest file, as a meta.yaml file, etc. And you have, I found at least one presentation in the French Perl workshop previously. And the Perl version is also something interesting to test. Let me show you why. You all know that in Perl 5.10, a new operator was introduced, so define OR. That's all great, because that's very useful, I mean, but you need to use Perl 5.10. For the same reason I explained previously, if your operation team only want you to use Perl as package, you may not have that version of Perl in production. So, a direct example of bugs you can have, you upgrade your development server, so you have a newer version of Perl. Since you are well aware of what's happening, you know that feature exists, so you start using it. And then when you deploy on production servers that do not have the same version of Perl, of course, it does not work. So there is one useful module called Perl minimum version, which also gives you a binary called script called perlver that enables you to test that all your code will work under a specific version of Perl. So if you do a test just like that, so it's very simple, you verify that all your code works with that version of Perl. So if in your code you have that operator, that test will fail. So make sure to do that. And you have, when you install that module, you will so that script will be able to scan your source code and tell you, based on your source code, it should be working on that version of Perl. So put it in some test, and then later on, when you will work on your source code, make sure that this test continues to pass. Another example is the same thing, the new operator state. that appeared okay. Perl 5.10 is maybe very, very old, but in production it's still very, very new. Another good module I would like to encourage you to use is test long string. When you are doing test on strings, when you want to compare strings, as soon as your string is more than 10 or 20 characters, it's very difficult to compare strings and to see exactly what changed. So you have a module, giving you a new function isString instead of the basic one test more is, and that new function isString gives you more details and more clearer details on the differences. So let's see an example immediately. So that's a test without test long string. So here you have, so it's an XML blob. Here you have what my code was generating, and here was what I was expecting. So there is some difference, but where? On which one? Of course, you all immediately find out that the difference is here, because here I have contact dash 1.0, and here I have contact dash 1.2. I do not need to do that tedious work, because if I use test long string, I have that test report. So it's saying me that both strings are of equal length, so that's 1 point, but it shows me only the part of the string that has a difference. You have options on parameters to see how much context you want before and after, but just having those two lines, we will immediately see the difference. You even have the exact position, so it's line 1, column 2, 200 and such. So very useful modules. I really recommend to use it as soon as you try to do tests on XML strings or stuff like that. It's very, very useful. Another thing useful to test is exceptions. So basically your code doing exceptions. So one module I'm using is TestTrap. So that presentation is already an enhanced presentation of what I meant in Nancy, because in French Perl workshop in last June. Because TestTrap, so you have some example here, you can basically do some code and make sure that either it dies or on the contrary it does not die and it returns normally. For me, I don't remember exactly why I've chosen to use that module at the end. It has kind of strange API to use, as you can see here. I've been recommended to see another module called test exception. So see both and see which one is looks better to you. Okay, and as I've said at the beginning, you have many techniques and many modules to do some mocking. That means that, like I said, you have a module that needs a database connection. Maybe you do not have that database ready or available exactly as is for your test, so you will need to mock that. Or you need to use some specific object or some specific module that for the same reason you do not wish to use directly, so you will need to mock it. So you can either mock a module. So for example here what I was doing is that I was testing some code that relies on that modules. So to make sure first, and I did not want to load that module as it is on the disk, or even it may not even exist because it's some kind of auto-generated module or whatever. So what I've done in my test, it's how I'm doing it, maybe there is a better way. But first I'm making sure to fake loading of that module. So I'm telling basically that it's already loaded. So from that point on, I'm sure that it will not get searched on the disk. but I may still need it later on my test. So I use the test mock module module to create a module, a mock module. So that's the first line, and then after that I attach to that object some method. So for example, I will need a new method, so I generate here my new method, which use a fake class which I'm specifying below. But after that, on my test below, if I do some test, I do indeed have such a module. Everything looks like as I have such a module loaded, and every other part of the source code needing that module will work. Of course, it creates also some problems, because it means that you need to here create as many methods as needed for your code, so you may need to write a lot of additional code. And of course, by doing that, you are shunting completely that module, so that module will not be really tested at all. So it means that that module will need to be tested in some other test files. And in the same way, if you do not need to mock completely a module, you can mock only an object, so using test mock object. So here you just create an object that has some specific interface, so you can create some method get and arm, and creating them that way means they just return some true value, and you do not care about which true value. So after that, if you're doing test here, you can just use that variable with sys API, and your code will be happy. Of course, the same restriction apply. You need to specify each method that your code will use, and nothing in that object is really tested, so you need other tests specific for that object. Test organization. Also something I would like to share to you. It's an idea I had on Ovid, create a blog post later on, so we at least agree on that. When you start having many modules on a with a hierarchy of modules, you may decide to have only one test file with all tests for all modules, or you may decide to have many test files. So what we decided to do is basically, if you have a module called that, you create a test called like that. So you create the same hierarchy for tests than for modules. And you create one test module, one test file per module. And if you want to go even further than that, because your module is complicated and you want to split your test, you can go one directory further down and then create multiple test files for separate function or separate method in your module. And also, I'm putting you some new links here, a blog post showing you that, contrary to what you can believe, test files are still Perl code, so even in test file you can do functions. So you can factorize things. And Ovid blog post shows basically the same thing, and you have inside even some tips to automate things if you're using VI or a clone of VI, and to create automatically the T file. When you are editing your module, it shows you some macros to automatically create the corresponding T file with some bootstrap tests. And there is also another module that I've seen, but I did not use, but it's working for the same goal. So it's called devel cover x covered. The idea is to store the relationship. With that module, you basically can have any organization of your test files, because the objective of that module is to store the relationship between some test file and some covered source files. So it may mean that you have more liberty to organize your test file as you want. I do not have a great experience with that module. I did not use it very much, but it seems something useful if you do not want to have such kind of hierarchy. So after doing some tests, you may have the question, did we test everything? So here you have a very, very useful module called devel cover that will enable you to see exactly what part of your modules you have tested based on your test files. It gives you, so it shows you a part of the code that has not been tested. It has not been tested either because you do not have any test that goes over there, or maybe because it's some dead code, it's some unreachable code that whatever test you are doing, you will never go to that line of code. And I will show you some examples later on. That module gives you basically 5 metrics. It tells you if each of your subroutine is tested, which means you have at least one test going inside each subroutine. When you have a branch, so you're basically doing a if, so if then else, so you have 2 branches, the then branch and the else branch. Do you have testing both branches? Because if you are doing a if, you mean you have 2 branches. If you test only one branch, you have done only half of the job. So you have a matrix showing you exactly which branches are tested and which are not. When you do a test, your test can be compounded. You can do if $A and $B and $C and $D, etc. And even things more complicated than that. You need to make sure that you test each part of the expression. Again, I will show example. Statement, if you wait over each line of your code, on the pod, again, like before, if each module, if each subroutine, has a documentation. So shall we... Let me show you an example. So an example of the component test I spoke just before. The devel cover will show you if you have a complicated test, will make sure that you have done enough tests to test each case. So for example, here we have a test which 4 parts. We test if the value is defined, if it matches such regular expression, if it's larger than that or lower than that. If you run your code, if you have enough tests, and if you run devel cover on that, it will show you that you do not, whatever test you are doing, you will not be able to test each 4 parts separately. Why? Because if you pass that second expression, so if you make sure that your dollar value is basically a list of digits, the second expression is always true. You cannot have something that's true here. You cannot find any value for which that test will be true and that test will be false. Whatever you do. So devel cover will show you that. It will show you that with all your tests, there is never a case where dollar value is true. That test on dollar value is true, and that test on dollar value is false. So that shows you, maybe, it's not exactly a bug, because things will work, but maybe there is something strange in that code. At least that part is useless. You can remove that, and you will not miss anything. And as long as you keep things like that, you will never have 100% code coverage, because devel cover will tell you there are no tests testing that thing is false. So if you want to have 100%, you will need to change your code. But maybe having 100% is not really a useful goal. It's a useful objective, but it's a useful destination. But the path is more important. So based on that code, you may decide to just leave it like that because you believe it's not really a bug. It has no big consequences, and you can just keep it like that. But you will, I mean, at least the person who created that code did not see it. So devel cover have seen it. Of course, for you now, it's obvious, but maybe it was not obvious just before I said it. And that's a simple case. Of course, you can have very, very more complicated cases. And what I've done, in fact, is even creating another test file that I call coverage. That test file, in fact, just tests the coverage value. Basically, in that small test file, I just have a hash with the name of my test files and as a key. and as a value the code coverage I'm expecting. So I'm coding that once, and then when I'm modifying my code, sorry, I can rerun that, and so it will rerun devel cover and make sure that I still have the same coverage. Of course, it will be even better if I have more coverage, but most of the time I will have less coverage because as soon as I add code, if I do not add the corresponding test, of course I have less coverage. So for example, just a snippet of the output, it said that for some kind of test, I expect it to have 100% coverage, because in the past I had 100% coverage, but in fact, right now I have only 96.9% coverage. So it shows me that probably I have changed something in my code forgetting to do tests. So when you start doing tests, you can once fix the situation and say for each of your tests, you know that for the given corresponding module, if you have the hierarchy we spoke about previously, for the corresponding module you have such coverage, you put that in a file and you run devel cover for each cases, and you can show if your coverage has changed over time. What I found also interesting is that obviously when you start you may have like 100 modules. You will at the beginning not have enough test files to test 100 modules. Maybe you have enough test files to test 20 of your modules. So based on your 20 modules, devel cover can give you a global coverage. It will tell you that maybe 10% of your 20 modules line codes are tested, but it's kind of not very interesting, but because you have 100 modules. So what I'm doing, there is an option in devel cover called merge DB, which is exactly for that, is to merge results. For whatever reason, I was not able to make it work, so maybe it's a problem of my understanding, or maybe I did not have the correct version to make that work. So what I do instead is that I basically start my test on each test file and parse the result, and then I get a coverage for all testing modules, and I just convert that to a number that relates to all modules I have. So of course it gives you a lower coverage, but it's related to all modules you have, including modules for which you do not have any test. Again, targeting 100% code coverage can be complicated. One example I found in our code that obviously when you at least you may know that when you register a domain name, it's for 1 year. So based on the day you buy the domain name, we need to compute what is 1 year. And of course, there are some difficulties when you are at the end of February. The plus 1 year is a difficult construction. So for whatever reason at that time, they were not using that date time, even if date time seems to be evil nowadays. But so we have some man-made code to handle that specific case of end of February. So it gets complicated to test things like that, because basically you need to be at the correct moment in time and such. But as I've been told, you have also a module called test mock time that enables you to work on stuff like that. So per best practices, that's also something very good and something we could spoke a lot. But just to be quick, it's a list of 256 practices, good practices. It's doing a static code analysis of your code, so you do not have the problems I talked previously, like opening a connection to database and stuff like that. So it shows you for a given number of lines of code if your code violates some practices or not. And of course you may disagree with Damien, which was the first list of rules, but the tools are flexible enough. You can configure them to skip some rules, you can add your own rules and stuff like that. What I found out recently, it's also, so you can discuss any rule and agree or disagree with any rule, but at least it's a set of rules that make sense and you have explanation for each of them. If you are not doing them, you are at least forced to think about why you are not respecting them. Maybe it's for good reason, but maybe it's not for good reason, so you need to think about it. And it's also a good tool to simplify code for newcomers. When you have already a lot of line of code and people are coming to your project, if your project adheres to some rules, to some practices, it may make their life simpler. Again, sharing some configuration I'm using because I found it I find it to make things simpler. When you run Perl Critic, it shows you basically the violation you have. Each line of code violates this and this rule. It gives you even the page number of a book because everything originated from a book. But which something it does not give you is the specific policy name, because the rule is called a policy. Because in some cases, you do not want to change your code, so you still know that you violate some policy. So instead, you can put in your code a comment like that to say explicitly, okay, I know that that code will not pass Perl Critic because I'm explicitly doing something opposite to what is recommended. But here you put the policy name to say, okay, I know that the line here is violating that name. So with that configuration in your .Perl Critic RC file, you have explicitly the policy name you can just copy and paste in your code. And also I'm removing some policies dealing with basically a word before Git, basically a word using CVS, where so there was some policy forcing you to have RCS keywords in each file and having a version variable in each file. If you are using Git as a VCS, you basically do not have such stuff. So it's basically safer just to remove them. And I'm working at severity 4, so you have 5 severities. Going under 4, obviously when you go down, you have more and more discussion on each policy. So already going to 4 is something enough. So some examples, I will go a little faster here. And again, I've built a small program that just calls Perl Critic and do some statistics. So you are able to have your modules sorted by the number of violations, so you can know where to start working on. We'll add that. So cpan tester, that's something very, very useful, and I do not think it's spoken about enough. It's, for me, a real strength of the Perl community. So basically, it's testing your code, typically a module you put on cpan, against a lot of different Perl versions and different operating systems and such. And there are many testers out there, so as soon as you push something to cpan in the following hours or few hours, you already have reports. So of course, when you distribute a module, you expect to have only results, positive results, but sometimes you may have failure. Of course, that works only if you distribute your module with tests. What the cpan tester do, they do not create tests for you, they just run the test you ship. But you have the positive action of having tests in some environments you can not have locally. I will show you only one example, there are more in my presentation, but I will skip them. You even have the test number here, so you can see on cpan that it's a real test. So one cpan tester for my module gave me that test, of course it's all automated, that test result, where I learned two things. First, that I'm Windows, in Windows basically that variable does not exist. So my code uses it, but because I'm not using Windows, so I should correct something. And it's also telling me something very important, that the encoding pragma is deprecated, because here we do not see it, but it's using some kind of newer version of Perl than the one I'm using. I did not follow all the Perl data good enough to see that the encoding pragma was deprecated. By that, I got the information. So let's keep that. Okay, so I hope that you learn at least something. If you have some feedback or some other good practices to share, I'm very happy to hear from you. And to things. I have one special offer for all of you. If you register .pm domain name, for each new .pm domain name, we will add at least one more unit test. So if you want to improve the quality of .pm domain names, please register them and please let me know so that I can add some unit tests in your name. So thank you, and if you have questions, if you want, I still have some more extra goodies, the USB adapter, so if you need one or need an extra one, please pick one at the front.
Ja.